Prime Minister Narendra Modi appeared on TV on the night of 24th March at 8 to announce the 21-day lockdown beginning midnight. With just 4 hours left, anxious people stormed grocery shops, medical stores, ATMs, and even liquor vents to get their fill. From 25th March, public transport came to a standstill, leaving migrant workers in big cities with no other choice but to walk. So they walked. Moving stories and disturbing visuals of exhausted families, with children in the tow, streaming out of metros and walking towards their homes, flooded the newspapers and TV channels. And it was just the beginning. The toll that the contagious virus extracted on lives was unparalleled in recent Indian history. Official estimates say that over 5 lakh lost their lives in the next 2 years. Some believe that the death toll was way higher. The March 24, 2020 lockdown was the first in the series of many which came later. Now, 3 waves, 2 years, and several lockdowns later, life is springing back to normalcy. And so is the economy. However, COVID has left a lasting impact on our lives. Perhaps one of the most visible and lasting impacts that the pandemic has had is on how Indians and people across the world view work and the workplace. While the hybrid model is here to stay, it is going to be sector specific. For example, companies in IT and allied industries will continue to work in a hybrid model. In fact, according to a survey by NASSCOM and Indeed, 70% of IT companies are trying to employ the hybrid model effectively. Flexible work is another model that has gained acceptance. Hindustan Unilever, India's biggest FMCG company, has introduced a new flexible work model. Under the scheme, employees would have a flexible association with the company, but still receive financial, security, retirement, and medical benefits. The worker will get a monthly retainer. In addition, he or she will get paid for each assignment. And between assignments, they are free to do other things that are important to them.
The pandemic, if we look at it, it has got two perspectives. One is an employee perspective, the other one is an employer perspective. From an employee perspective, I think there has been a disruption when we talk about the way we work and how hybrid work and work from home have actually become the terms which employees are using across the industry on a day-to-day basis. So what I foresee will continue to happen is people will be more focused towards working from home. Flexibility will remain there, and also they will focus on the mental health, because that's what this pandemic has taught all of us, that we need to focus on our physical and mental stability as well. From an employer perspective, I think the pandemic actually accelerated the adoption of technology, and the future will be all about the right combination of technology and human intelligence. Whether we talk about talent acquisition, we talk about talent management, automation will play a very significant role, and the employee engagement will also be a key factor what organizations would be looking for across the globe. And the virtual town halls, the constant communication, more liquidity of information will continue to happen, and the organization will keep on focusing on employee health benefits, financial and physical well-being of an employee.
The pandemic has also left a lasting impact on what we consume and how we consume. The Boston Consulting Group interviewed consumers during the second wave of India's COVID-19 outbreak. It then compared that survey with its previous one from August 2020. It also compared the findings to data that it had collected during the pandemic's first phase. The group found that there are accelerating behaviors which increased rapidly after the initial COVID outbreak and continued to increase as time passed. For example, the number of consumers who purchased nutritional supplements and healthier packaged foods for the first time surged by around 30% during the first stage of the pandemic, and this was still rising as of late May 2021. Then there are sustained momentum behaviors. These include the use of a wide array of digital services, use of e-commerce, digital wallets, online educational classes, paid over-the-top media services, and free online video apps like YouTube jumped early in the pandemic. By the time of the second wave, their use had settled at those elevated levels. These behavioral changes are more permanent than others. As a result, the market for these services is likely to remain robust even after COVID. This is good news for the likes of Amazon and Bearjuice. There are also sensitive behaviors which tend to change in response to the intensity of the pandemic and lockdowns. For example, relying on online doctor consultations. According to BCG, the strong growth seen in doctor teleconsultations compared to visiting them in person is unlikely to continue after COVID. Lastly, there were transient behavioral changes. These gained significant traction during the early stages of the pandemic but didn't last. Examples would be online fitness and hobby classes. The pandemic may also change how we do business. India Inc., like the rest of the world, will have to re-evaluate established notions about scale and global supply chains. In India, before the pandemic and even now, there has been a call for greater integration with global supply chains. Consequently, the focus has been on large, formal enterprises that can leverage their heft to play a significant enough role in said networks. It is also felt that India could benefit from the shift in global supply chains away from China in the aftermath of COVID-19. And while that will hold true, there could be a more fundamental shift in store as companies reorganize how they obtain their goods and build resilience. As the Harvard Business Review explains, while dealing with the topic of global supply chains in a post-pandemic world, there is a rise in economic nationalism. According to it, manufacturers across the world are going to face greater competitive and political pressures to increase their domestic production and increase employment in their home countries. They will also be expected to either reduce or eliminate their dependence on sources that are deemed to be risky. As a result, India Inc. and the government cannot only focus on greater integration with global supply chains. Instead, alternatives will have to be found and pursued in parallel.
Now, the whole world is saying actually we need locally resilient economic systems in which smaller actors, and they'll have to be smaller because their markets are less, will have to be working with each other in clusters of economic systems. And in that will grow, like I'm saying so, smaller enterprises will grow, will thrive, informal enterprises will get more recognition and will thrive along with the larger ones within those systems. So that is the trend. And that's why, whether it's the US or Europe, they're talking more about, building their own Atmanirbhar. And our idea of Atmanirbhar, which was before the pandemic, was being poo-pooed by many economists to say, oh, we are going back to being protectionist. It wasn't about being protectionist. It was about being reliant, self-reliant. And we need that. The whole world is recognizing that each part better be self-reliant because it cannot rely on the others to keep connected with it.
In the post-pandemic world, people will be more focused on striking a balance between work and life. The embrace of digital tools and channels for making purchases will rise, with a heightened focus on health. And last but not least, a re-evaluation of how and where to build our products and services is necessary.
If you like this video, share it and subscribe to Business Standard. For more news, views and insights, log on to www.business-standard.com. Do also follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Telegram and LinkedIn.